Welcome to the channel where all you gotta do is finish up these control arms. Okay, so I finished machining this kind of offset cut. Righty loosey, lefty fighty when you have it in like that. So basically all I did is put this little piece of 1/4 inch aluminum in one of the jaws so that set this thing off center. So now this is going to be the clearance here on the outside of the control arm, and then it tapers down into back where the, so this is still thick where the attachment points are for the bars, and then I have to put this on the mill and cut this across here so this will go away. And the reason I didn't go all the way in here is, if it's not obvious, the part would have flown out and hit me in the head, right? So I kept this hoop in here just to cut this, and then this is the same depth as this, or a little bit deeper. So when I put this on the mill, clamp it on the vise like that, and then go across here with a ball end mill, this will go away, and I'll be left with just the parts that I want. Anyway, it's getting a little more complicated than I wanted it to be, but you know, that's why I said it's going to take a couple weeks longer. So again, this is the I have two more here that I got to do the same thing to. But before I do this to them, setup's pretty simple, but before I do this to them, I'm gonna put this in the mill, cut this off, and then put it in my fixture, weld it on, make sure everything clears like I want it to. I actually need to put a chamfer on this as well. Now would not be a terrible time to put that chamfer on, now that I think about it. I could just jam it in here, the same fixture, and use this. Okay, so I whittled up this new piece and showed most of it. Now I turned it on the lathe, then I put it off center, made this oblongy, and then I took it over to the bandsaw and actually that way, yeah, anyway, that way, cut that off, and then I put it on the mill and put a radius there. I'll still need to chamfer these guys off here, but I'll probably leave those until it's welded. I don't know. But anyway, this does not go like that. It goes like this now. So this chamfer is on the top, and then when this slides together, it goes opposite. Goes like that now, so the snap ring, I got plenty of room for it. So anyway, it's going to be like that. So the same but different. This arm, like the position of the center of the rotation of the ball joint, the pivot point will be the same, but these arms will be on a slightly different angle, because instead of going up here, they'll be down here. So won't change the geometry at all, it'll just change the angle of this arm. But that doesn't matter. That arm could go up, down, left, right, zigzag, whatever, as long as it's where the pivot points are that matters, it's not the shape of the arm. Which is why that stupid thing, right, this mess, BMW decided was good. I decided otherwise. I got the suspension geometry like I like, and now I need to science out. It was scienced out in CAD, but I didn't really like it. I want to keep the upper shock mount out from the engine compartment, so I want it to be all tucked inside here. So I kind of changed it around a little bit, but once I have it in CAD, I just put some tape in there to kind of show what it's going to look like. So, you know, there's a hoop that goes like that and down. So I'm going to put a diagonal, ends up being like at 38 degrees. And then from the top bar down to there, and then the shock mount will be like here. So I think that's going to work out pretty good. Still can get to my adjustments. That's the shock I'm going to be running, which is kind of a drag race shock, but you can revalve them to make them. That used to be a road race shock until they came out with different road race shocks. Now they're mostly used for drag racing, but they're still pretty darn good, in my opinion. Could be wrong. Anyway, this is what I came up with. So I got a 1-inch DOM, 1/8-inch wall bar. Here is diagonal, so that runs that way. And then I got 1 5/8 coming down. And I hole sawed a slot in here. So all of this is flush. So this and this is all on the same plane. So when it's in the car, that inner fender well will be all on the same plane. So I can put some little buttons on this guy and then tack the sheet metal into that. And so that sheet metal won't be all just flippity floppity like it is, you know, factory. It'll be more, this and the piece that goes up to here will be like a shear panel kind of thing. So, whereas before it pretty much just held the bumper up. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. I'm also gonna cut this off at an angle, and then the tabs will be on the end of there. So there it is, duct taped in place, but you can see I got a diagonal bar here, add some stiffness to this whole structure, and then I'm going to cut this off at 25 degrees and then put a flat plate on there and then a couple of tabs, and then that'll be the shock mount. And then inside, like the motor ends up about to here, so from here across I'm going to put a brace that goes on and off to kind of triangulate all this, because open boxes don't have good torsional rigidity, right? And this is like, it's got a lot of structure in this direction, and the other side will have the same thing, but unless you box it in, you don't have much. So I need to box that in. If it's bolted on, that's fine, but I'm not going to put a like those Shelby strut tower braces that go like this. Yeah, that doesn't, no. That takes all the stiffness out of it. You got to have a 2-force member. You put some bending in it, it can be flippy floppy. So won't be doing that. Okay, so there it is. It's in with duct tape, but that's kind of what it's going to look like. I don't know how well you can see that, but see it a little bit better from over here, I guess. So yeah, that's the structure. Stiffen up the chassis and give a place to get the spring, some place to push against. Okay, so that one over there is, I already showed you this one. And now I made the other half. So just essentially just a mirror image of it. So this will pop into the driver's side, and we're one step closer. The 1,000-mile journey. Okay, so I got that one shock mount all fitted and taped in there, and I made a couple of these guys, and to get more clearance I just put it in the lathe with some offset, so it's got more clearance on this side, and then the tubes weld on this side. So this one's already been machined. Once I get it all welded together, I'll go in with a flap disc and, you know, kind of tidy that up a little bit. But yeah, this is where the mounts for the shock absorber are going to go, on this little piece of 1x2. And yeah, I just need to, well, I probably need to pop this thing back out of here now that it's welded pretty good, and put a bigger chamfer on here and here, and then spark it all together. I got some manufacturing notes here and there, but it's all in CAD, so it's just to remind my old brain. So in this thing I had to modify a wee bit, because originally this piece was going to be made out of thinner tube, 1/8 inch wall, or 1/4 inch wall, and ended up being 3/8 wall. So I had to open this thing up 1/16 of an inch. So, and its sister, its mirrored sister. So I just put this on the lathe and put a boring bar in there and opened that up. So now the mirror, that's the mirror image of it, right, like that. So that goes in this hole over here. So this fixture is the Sonda lower control arms and all the front control arms for this guy, if you flip it upside down. So, because I'm cheap and lazy and stuff. Okay, so got this thing all welded up. It's still a bit toasty, but not the best welds in the world, but you can do that because I did it. But I think it'll hold. Okay, so this arm's all welded up. I got the left side arm on here and got it all fixtured in place with the plastic bracket, and then I tacked it on the top side, and then I flipped the whole fixture over and tacked it on the back side. Alright, so there it is in this little fixture, and this is centered, and it's already coped. I put a nice chamfer on there. I don't know if it's going to focus or not. A little tack, and now I'm going to take it over to the mill, just like I did the last one. Hole saw through there, and then this piece goes on there. And I can sparklate that, just a little tack, and then I'll put this piece and this piece, which is partially done, not completely done, but it's like that. Alright, so this is the one that I just tacked together, so I still got to weld that. And then the mirror image of it I have on the fixture clamped down, so I can go over to the mill and saw these guys. I'll probably take it back apart, put a bigger chamfer on this thing, and then tack this top and bottom, and then that thing will be all tacked, and I'll have to take it apart again, and then I'll have to take it back off the fixture one more time, because after I cut this with a hole saw, I'll need to chamfer those. So, which I just use the flat disc and put a nice chamfer on there, so I have some penetration. So anyway, getting close to having all these control arms done, and then yeah, and then this guy's got to go in there like that. Okay, so my MacGyver fixture, 1,000 hose clamps and whatever, but I got this guy tacked in place. Can't really do too much welding on it or it melts the 3D printed fixture, which is fine. It's just there to hold it in position at the 5 degrees. And I didn't really like where this thing sat compared to these, so I put this piece of, you know, bent up wire in there. I did that same thing on this one, so they'll be both consistent. So this is essentially the same fixtures I did that guy on, just flipped upside backwards. So anyway, I'll pop this out of here. After it cools down a little bit more, I'll pop it out of there, and then I'll weld it together more. Stick this guy in here, weld that in. Maybe do a little bit of flap disc work on that. Get a nice chamfer on there. And then, yeah, I'll take all this this Sharpie mark. Once you weld it, that Sharpie mark turns into permanent, like permanent marker. Even acetone won't get it off. You gotta like wire brush it off of there. So I'll get rid of all that junk. And then I'll spark all these guys together. And then I'll have upper control arms. I still need to machine these to the right width, because these things are gonna, you know, they'll move around a little bit when you weld them. So I'm gonna do a finish machining so I can get the center of that to there all even, so they're all the same. Uppers and lowers, left ends, rights. So I haven't figured out how I'm gonna fixture that yet, but yeah, we'll figure it out. How hard could it be? Okay, so I got this thing fixtured up on my milling machine. And I wasn't sure how I was going to do this, but I just flipped the jaws upside down so they stick up a little bit more. And then, I didn't really need to do this, but I made that level-ish. And then I knew I needed to remove an 1/8 inch of this at least. So I just started cutting on here. And then just to make them so they're both even, put this straight edge here and measure from the outside of this to here, and that's supposed to be 1 inch. And you hold your tongue just right in your mouth, you can get that. And then that'll square this thing. Oh, and yeah, this thing isn't necessarily perpendicular to these, so I put this in the vise, I leveled it, and then I indicated from here to here, the center of this to the center of this, within a thou. Probably doesn't need to be that good, because these things, you know, twist and warp and whatever when you weld on them. As soon as they, I mean, there was a bar in here clamped together when I welded it, but there's residual stresses in there. Unless you like heat treat it with that bar in place, it's gonna move. If these bars were like going in straight, then you'd have a better chance, but the fact that they're going in at an angle, they're going to pull more on one side than the other, on this side than this side, so it is what it is. So now that I have this set to 1 inch, I can make this the proper width, and this the proper width, and this the proper width. So that is where I'm starting, and then when I put the other one on, it'll be flipped upside down, right? The first cut will be over here. I'll make that 1 inch. From that to that, it'll be over here now, from that to that. And then once that's done, then I can cut this, and then this, and then this. And then I'll do the same thing on the bottom. Piece of cake. Why don't people just spend 3 weeks of their life building A-arms? Not a problem. I could just pay a couple grand for them, and then they'd have them. Thanks for watching. If you like this content and want more, subscribe, like, and share.